All right, welcome back, you guys. I'm back here again. And today I want to talk about something on this live video today that's kind of really caught my attention. And one of the things that really sticks out to me when I'm helping people, whether they're making the move to Utah or they're looking to make the move within Utah, one of the biggest draws right now, at least this year and last year, and honestly for the past 2 to 3 years, has been new construction. So in this video, I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to talk about all things new construction, but most importantly, I'm going to show you through sharing a map of the state of Utah to show you exactly where all of the new construction is happening. Then in next week's video, I'm highlighting the suburbs and the areas that are not new construction. So I'm kind of dividing this into 2 weeks where I can talk about the hottest subdivisions that are older neighborhoods. But this week I'm talking all things new construction. And it all kicks off because just a little over a week ago, I got news of a new master plan development. In fact, I wanted to share that with you. But basically, what if I told you there's a 13,000 home new development happening just north of Salt Lake City? And this particular development is going to bring upwards of 35 to 40,000 new residents just right there on the southwestern corner of Weber County, which is about 35, 40, maybe 45 minutes north of downtown Salt Lake City. This is a region that's seeing explosive growth. And I think this is really one of the answers to the affordable housing crisis. Now, I know that a lot of people here locally don't want to see new construction just go unchecked. But to be honest, if we don't build new homes, the demand for these homes is just so high that we're going to see homes continue to skyrocket in price. And for me personally, I don't think that's a good thing for the state of Utah. So welcome to this video. And if you're here, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay, drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. And as I go through this with you, I want to make sure that I'm getting feedback and see what you guys want to know more about. So there's some places that are throughout the state of Utah that I don't regularly talk about because they're not really high growth areas, but I want to cover those as well. And I've had numerous people reach out to me right here on my YouTube channel where they've dropped comments and let me know some really thoughtful ideas as to what I should include in upcoming videos. So if that's you, drop a comment. Let me know what you think I should do and cover and talk about in upcoming videos as well. So, but with that said, let's dive right in. I want to share, first of all, this development that is pretty impactful in terms of the growth here in the state of Utah. So this right here is the development that I was just talking about. This just came out last month. Developers envision a large Daybreak-like planned community for West Weber County. And just to put that into perspective, let me also share with you on a map where this is located. Let me switch up my screen here. So here's a map of the state of Utah. And as I zoom on in to the state of Utah, and here's Salt Lake City right here in the center of the screen. If I drive 35 to 40 minutes northward and up along this new freeway, there's a patch of land right here on the south end of Weber County. And it's this region right here where that master plan development will go. And you can see it's directly west of downtown Ogden. And this is a booming area. This is a metropolitan area that's going to see a lot of growth in the coming decade or more. And you can see, it's clear to see that there's a lot of farmland and a lot of places where development can yet still happen. So as I drive through these areas, I see these areas every single day as I drive around with clients and we're looking at properties. But as you drive through here, you can see a lot of really awesome new development happening. And if I drive through these neighborhoods, there's still so much open space for more development to yet take place. So if I kind of drop in on some of these developments here, these are the types of homes that are being built up in Weber County. And to be honest with you, it's a much greater value than down here in Salt Lake County as well, because you get more house for the money if you live up in Weber County. So of the three major metropolitan areas along the Wasatch Front right here, the Ogden metropolitan area sits north of Salt Lake City. The Utah County or Provo metropolitan area sits just to the south. But it's this Ogden area and the surrounding metropolitan area that is the most affordable of the three major metropolitan areas. So Bella Bond, thanks for commenting, by the way. She asks, let me put this on the screen really quick. She asks, where do houses for sale exist with yards and unobstructed mountain views like a homestead feel? So I'm going to actually talk about this in next week's video for sure, because the new construction developments aren't really covering those particular areas. But one of the places that is kind of captured my heart that kind of fits that description of what you're talking about with respect to unobstructed views, two places actually. There's a place here on the Wasatch back called Heber City and the Heber Valley. I would classify that as one of those areas that would fit that description of what you're describing. But also north of Park City and north of Salt Lake City is this area just up in the mountains here. And this is an area called Mountain Green. And when I drive through this area in Mountain Green, I kind of fall in love every single time because this is kind of what you see. Here, let me share my screen with you. This is what you see in Mountain Green. It's beautiful, it's breathtaking, and there's mountain views, wintertime, summertime, there's mountain views all around. And I think it really creates a really cool experience if this is the kind of lifestyle you're going for. So, but I will talk about this much more in next week's video as well, because a lot of the new construction growth is happening in areas that in the past have been considered a little less desirable for numerous reasons. And I'll touch on that throughout this video as well. So let me share this other screen with you first. Let me go back here really quick if I can figure out how to use this. Actually, we'll stay right here. And let's just zoom right on out and talk about you know what I want to do? I want to talk about the 10 to 15 fastest growing regions or areas in the state of Utah that are drawing in the new construction growth. And new construction, it plays a vital role, especially where in these last few years, the real estate market has softened substantially. And as the real estate market does soften, it means new construction becomes the best bargain. And it's something I really feel strongly about, that the reason why it's such a bargain to buy new construction is because if your dollar only stretches so far, you get so much more house for the money when you're buying new construction versus existing. For example, if you're looking for something that you can hit that $3,000 or $3,500 per month payment, you can get a lot more house for the money when you're buying new construction. And that's because a lot of these builders are really deeply incentivized to push homes and get homes selling because they've got shareholders to answer to. These are big businesses. They're nationwide, regional, and local home builders that are building a lot of homes, and they need to keep their shareholders and their investors happy. So they've got to keep product moving. So in order to do that, they're throwing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 towards the purchase of a home just to help buy that rate down and make that home more attractive for you to purchase. So when it comes down to your monthly payment when you purchase new construction, it's almost always substantially less expensive than if you were to buy an existing home. Now, it's fair to say, and I'm going to talk about this next week, there are methods that we use to negotiate existing homes where we can get closer and closer to those same level of concessions or incentives that new construction is providing. It just takes a little more fighting and it takes a little more negotiating power, but we do it all the time. In fact, I just got a client under contract a couple of days ago where we were able to negotiate concessions in such a way that my client was inclined to retract their offer from a new construction home and go under contract on an existing home. So we're going to talk about that at length next week, but let's talk about new construction areas and the fastest growing areas. So when we look at the state as a whole, where Utah is an incredibly fast growing state, we want to talk about where's the most growth happening. So if you're considering making the move to Utah, or if you're considering making an upgrade and you're looking to sell that starter home or that other home that you're kind of tired of and get into a new construction home, this video and this explanation is probably going to help you quite a bit. So these new developments that are happening, like the one I shared initially, the one up north in Weber County, they're starting to pop up at different, with different sizes all over the state of Utah because there's so much need for this growth to happen in order to stabilize the real estate market here in terms of balancing out the supply versus demand, because we've been so much more heavy on demand than we have in terms of supply. And we need to see our real estate prices kind of remain true and stop going up. In fact, I'd be a big fan if prices would come down a bit as well. So, okay. So the number one hottest place for new construction in the entire state of Utah, the number one spot is Eagle Mountain. And I talk about Eagle Mountain a lot in all of my videos. Well, not all of them, but a lot of videos. Eagle Mountain sits out here on the western side of Utah County. And as we explore Eagle Mountain, if you drive out here, you'll notice there's just a lot of open land. There's endless open land out here. And I've recently done a video. I did a video just a few weeks ago about a large master plan community out here known as Firefly. And Firefly is an incredibly well thought out, well planned for subdivision of 8,000 homes. And it sits right here down in this corner of Eagle Mountain. And you can see the beginning stages of that development right here. And Eagle Mountain is not just Firefly, it's just a small little portion of what is happening in Eagle Mountain. But Eagle Mountain is really kind of a different vibe because it feels like you're somewhat removed from the Wasatch Front, because as you can see here to the east, there's a mountain that separates Eagle Mountain to the rest of the Wasatch Front. So it almost feels like you're in a different locale or place because it feels like you're removed. So, but granted, it takes you 30 minutes to drive from the heart of Eagle Mountain into I-15 and Lehigh right here. So for many people, in terms of making that commute, it can be too far for them. But if you work remotely, or if you work a type of job where you move around and travel around the Wasatch Front or the state quite frequently, this could be a really good spot. It's going to be about an hour south of downtown Salt Lake City. And with the infrastructure that's being developed currently in Saratoga Springs and soon to come out towards Eagle Mountain, it's going to make the commute or the travel time into Salt Lake City and the Salt Lake City International Airport much, much more attractive. I don't think that commute will ever get less than 45 minutes, but it's definitely going to make it much smoother once those freeways are built out. But Eagle Mountain is booming in growth. It's just past 72 or 73,000 residents now. And most of that growth that we're seeing is happening in a couple different spots. It's happening right here right around the center of Eagle Mountain. And it's also happening in this little arm out here, which is known as Firefly. So Firefly is a portion of Eagle Mountain. So whenever I talk about that, just know it's a large master plan community of 8,000 homes. And those homes are going to be sitting on lots that range from small lots all the way up to even 1 acre, a full 1 acre lot. So it's kind of unique in that this is one of those few places in the state of Utah that's close to the city that has room to do that. So it will be limited and those lots will come later on. But Eagle Mountain is really desirable because of the opportunity for growth. Number one, because it's more affordable. The land is less expensive out here than it is closer along the Wasatch Front. Therefore, when you buy a home in Eagle Mountain, you're going to get a lot more home for the money here in Eagle Mountain than even in Lehigh or neighboring Saratoga Springs. But yeah, I think that speaks enough to what Eagle Mountain is. I think the biggest challenge we're seeing with people making the move to Eagle Mountain is that the commercial development is not yet there. So if I zoom into my screen here, there's only one little pocket of commercial development that's actually been built out. And if I zoom in here to Street View, you can probably tell I don't think that this is actually going to show very much because it's still under construction when these images were taken. Yeah, that's right. So this is all built out now, but there are some restaurants and there's a grocery store and gas stations and things like that. But there's so little in way of other development. And so the commercial development that's coming, whether that be a Chick-fil-A or a Cafe Rio or a Walmart, all those things will come in time. My prediction is that in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see a lot of change from where we are today because the growth is just catching fire out here. And there's already enough residents in this area of Eagle Mountain, including out here, to support more businesses. And so I know that those businesses are already making plans to expand out here. It's just a matter of time. And so in essence, Eagle Mountain is going to change a lot in the coming years and even decades. And this is going to be one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing area in the state of Utah for many, many years. I don't think this is going to change. I think Eagle Mountain is going to cement itself as the fastest growing city in Utah for a lot of years and for a lot of reasons. It's a really, really great place to buy and to live. All right, number 2 on the list is neighboring Eagle Mountain, and that is Saratoga Springs. So I like to highlight this just so you can see the boundaries of these cities. But directly east of Eagle Mountain is Saratoga Springs. And this is the second fastest growing area in the state. So when you combine Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, it feels like it could be all the same, but they are distinctly different. When you purchase a home in Saratoga Springs, you're not going to get the same size lot as you would if you were living out here in Eagle Mountain. But it is an incredible place to find a new home, find a perfect place for you. I think Saratoga Springs offers a lot in way of having better access to the city because you're about 20, maybe even 30 minutes closer than if you were living in Eagle Mountain. So I think Saratoga Springs, in a nutshell, still has a lot of room for growth. You can still see, as you look at the boundaries here, there's a lot of open space that will still be developed. And you can see developments like this one that have been annexed into Saratoga Springs. This one is known as Wildflower. And so we see a lot of these developments with 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 homes that are being filled into these areas. And Saratoga Springs is uh, kind of that city where a lot of people feel like it's maybe too far, maybe not, depending on where they need to commute to and where they need to work. But Saratoga Springs is a phenomenal location where I see a lot of growth here coming in the future years. One of my favorite developments in Saratoga Springs is, well, there's two of them, is Wildflower up here. But my other one, my number one favorite, is right down here on the southern end of well, it's actually more closer to the center of Saratoga Springs, and that's this development called Beacon Point. So Beacon Point is a great development here. There's a handful of builders that are building in here, including Symphony Homes and Rainy Homes and David Weekley and Destination Homes. But this region right here will all fill in with those new homes from this particular development known as Beacon Point. So with that said, there are developments throughout Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain that's going to provide enough growth where I think these two cities are likely going to stay at the top of the list for many, many years to come. And that takes us to number 3. And this is a place that I get oftentimes judged for forgetting about because I don't talk about it nearly enough on my channel. And I need to. In fact, I'm heading down to St. George in another week and a half to do a whole bunch of video content because this area is booming in growth. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, this is the region of the state in the southwest corner of the state of Utah where we have so much happening. This has been one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, let alone the state of Utah. And in years past, it was the number one fastest growing city in the state of Utah. It just so happens that Eagle Mountain has taken over. So, but St. George is forever going to be growing. And as you look at St. George and you look at the borders here, you can see the border to Nevada is just right over here to the west. And there's the Utah-Arizona border right here. And we can see if we zoom in here, there are subdivisions and developments and master plan communities going in like crazy, even right up to the Arizona border. In fact, I drove this development not too long ago, just a few months ago, and I was driving my vehicle right along the Arizona border right here through this development. And there's homes going up everywhere. Now, this particular development is one of the most attractive developments down here, and it's known as Desert Color. And if I can find, let's see here, some photos. Desert Color it's a really well-planned community. It's got some beautiful pools and beautiful homes, beautiful properties, palm trees. This is the kind of lifestyle in St. George that people are looking for. It's a great desert community where you can go and get away, and off-roading is a way of life here, by the way. There are countless trails and ways to get out in nature and get out and explore. But this area, not only in St. George, because St. George proper is what I have highlighted right here, but the neighboring area to the east, which is Washington, is another area that I'm including in this list because Washington is simply just an extension of St. George, and Washington sits right here. And this is where so much of the growth in the state of Utah is happening. And when I talk to people that either call me from St. George or they're considering living in St. George, the biggest concern that people have is water. And that's the same thing if you live in Vegas or Phoenix. But water is a big issue here in Utah, and it's bigger nowhere than it is in St. George. So while we're talking about St. George, how do we tackle the problem of having enough water to sustain the growth in this region? Because so much of the open land that will and is being developed is land that doesn't really have any use right now. It's not being used for agricultural purposes, so it's not really using water right now. Unlike a lot of the areas in northern Utah, it's a little bit different. But as you look around the St. George area directly to the west, you see this area that's called Warner Valley. And Warner Valley is another spot where they're talking about the addition of another major reservoir. Because right now, the reservoir that we have here is Sand Hollow State Park. And this is kind of a playground. It's fun to be able to use these reservoirs that we use to sustain life here, also for recreation. But the fun thing about Sand Hollow is you can go boating, you can go fishing, you can go ride your four-wheelers or UTVs on the sand dunes. It's a really fun place to go, and it's one of the most visited, actually, it's the most visited state park in the entire state. So there's a lot of things to love about Sand Hollow in this area. In fact, let me share some photos. But this is what Sand Hollow looks like. A lot of people love to come here and just go play. But there's talks of another major reservoir being built down here to help sustain and develop life here in southern Utah. So this region directly south, closer to the Arizona border, is a perfect place to add that that additional reservoir. There's a lot of pushback, of course, and of course, there's going to be a lot of red tape and things to get through. Um, had a gentleman reach out to me not too long ago, just a few days ago, actually, to have a conversation specifically around this because he owns land here. And so the hope for him and for many others is, can we build something here that we can sustain for decades to come so that we can develop this land and utilize it for what we want to do with it, right? So St. George and Washington and this entire region down here is going to continue growing. And one of the reasons why, in my opinion, this is such an attractive place to live, while it is, 4 hours removed from Salt Lake City, it's really close to Las Vegas. In fact, if I zoom out just a little bit, Las Vegas is not very far away. So if you need to be close enough to a major metropolitan area, whether it be for the airport or something else, it's not too far. It's an easy drive to pop down into Las Vegas. But there is an airport here. It's a nice regional airport here. There's a nice healthcare system here. But the main attraction is just the way of life, the lifestyle, and the outdoors. And as you look around the region, you can see it's covered in red rock, which I think is just phenomenal because that's what makes Utah special. In fact, if I zoom out, you can see this entire region in Utah and the northern part of Arizona is just red rock. This is where the Grand Canyon is. This is where Lake Powell National Recreation Area is. In fact, if I zoom in here, you can see this is the quintessential experience of what you get to see when you live in Utah and travel through the state of Utah. And there's nothing better. This is why people come here from all over the country and all over the world to experience the red rocks of southern Utah. And here's Monument Valley. You can see there's a lot of things to love about southern Utah. And it's funny because most people associate that with this other corner of the state. But in reality, this is the most accessible area. And that leads us to the next part of my conversation around the St. George area. The biggest attraction is Zion National Park. So it's just a quick drive to get up here over to Zion National Park. And Zion National Park is the third most visited national park in the entire country. So after the Smoky Mountains and perhaps the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone, depending on the year, Zion is the number 3 most visited national park in the entire country. And there's valid reasons why. Zion National Park is gorgeous. You can see, let me zoom in here really quick. I want to show you. Let's see here. I probably should have planned this a little bit better and had the images already ready to go. These are not the right photos. I wanted to find the most recognizable photos of Zion National Park. And I should have probably prepared them and had them up here. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Yeah, I don't have them prepared. But if you do look up Zion National Park, here we go. Here's some photos. This is Zion National Park. This is what people think of when they come here and get to experience the park in the summertime. There are overlooks that look into the canyons. There's even this little ridge back that you see right here. This is known as Angel's Landing, and hiking that is treacherous. You actually have to obtain permits in order to hike Angel's Landing. But then if you get down into the bottom of these canyons and the slot canyons, this is what you get to experience. And this is a really big reason why people choose to come to and visit, but also live in southern Utah, because it's just breathtaking. In fact, one of my favorite things to do in Zion, besides the, just overlooking into the area, I like to get down in the bottom of it and hike. There's a place here known as the Subway, and you can hike through these areas where the rock is literally cut out in kind of a circular radius pattern where the water carved through the sandstone of southern Utah. It's really, really beautiful. And it makes for some really awesome hiking and slot canyons and things like that. But in essence, this is why southern Utah specifically is fueling so much of this growth, because it's so incredibly fun to live here. I will say that my least favorite part about it is just the really incredibly hot summers. You're going to have that Las Vegas style summer, so you have to be prepared for the heat. Granted, it is a very dry heat, which helps, but it's worth noting. So that's number 3 on the list is St. George. Number 4, we're going to go right back up north, and it's probably not a shock to many, but if we come right back up to the northern part of the state, let me pull up my screen here. We've covered the top 3 fastest growing areas in the state, but we're going to talk about number 4, and that's Lehi. So Lehi, again, it borders Saratoga Springs, and of course, it's adjacent to Eagle Mountain as well. this northern tip of Utah County is where all this growth is happening. And Lehi is fueled by what we affectionately call the Silicon Slopes, which is the tech corridor right here through the I-15 corridor in between Provo and Salt Lake City. This is where a lot of these high-paying jobs are going. Therefore, it's creating a lot of demand in real estate. And we can see a lot of development happening all over Lehi, including up here in the hills, the foothills just above Lehi. You can see developments happening. They're beautiful. There's new things being announced here. Right here, they announced a new temple to be built. Just directly to the east of here is a Texas Instruments semiconductor plant, and they've actually announced they are doubling the size of this. They're spending $11 billion to double the size of this semiconductor plant here. And so when you drive through here right now, you see a skyline full of cranes. There's probably a dozen cranes up in the air building this plant right now. So Lehi's booming for different reasons than so many other areas in the state of Utah. It's really attracting the high-paying jobs. It's attracting people in healthcare as well and financial services, because with those higher-paying jobs comes other jobs, and it feeds into other types of work that's needed. And so we also have the addition of a new hospital here, which is the new Primary Children's Hospital, which is a really well-positioned hospital in Salt Lake City that's now expanded down here in Utah County. We can also see that they're building a new freeway that connects to the new freeway in Saratoga Springs out here, right here through the heart of Lehi to connect to I-15. And this is the area right now in the state of Utah that I view as having the worst traffic. Making your way from I-15 over to Saratoga Springs at rush hour is the worst traffic in the state, in my opinion. And I drive this quite frequently at all hours of the day. And so it's nice to see that the infrastructure is well thought out and planned. They've preserved the land necessary in order to accommodate interchanges as well as a massive freeway. And you can see that in my upcoming videos because I've actually flown my drone over these and shown you. And so I can actually show you exactly what to expect in these areas, which is really cool. But this growth in Lehi is not finished yet. So I still see Lehi growing at a rapid rate for many years to come. There's still a lot of new construction happening here. And of course there is in the neighboring cities of Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain as well. All right, so those are the fastest growing cities down here, but what about the rest of the little hot pockets that I like to talk about in terms of new construction? So let's kind of talk about those spots before we wrap up, because we don't want to just focus on just one area of Utah. We started off talking about this new development happening up in Weber County, and there are a lot of developments up here north of Salt Lake City in Weber County as well, located in Syracuse and throughout this western side of the I-15 corridor. These areas are booming and growing, whether it be Clinton or all of these areas in between. There's still new subdivisions that are happening. So the question is, do you want to live north or do you want to live south? And typically living south comes with it, or you have a different way of life down south than you do up north. And for different people, different things are more attractive. But I think this area up here is still going to be a major contributor to our growth here in the state of Utah. Now, if I look back over the past 5 years, for example, one of the fastest growing places in the state that's not making the list right now as of 2025, but it's actually been downtown Salt Lake City. So downtown Salt Lake City has gone through the process in the last 5 years of more than doubling its number of residential units, which is mind-boggling to me because Salt Lake City was never that type of city that you would go and live in like that. But the population in Salt Lake City is booming, and it's going to continue to do so as Salt Lake City is now building up instead of building out. And so we see a lot of dilapidated city blocks that are getting, scraped, leveled out, and just new developments going in with mid or high-rise buildings. So we see a lot of that happening in downtown Salt Lake City. So don't count out Salt Lake City as a place for growth. If it's the city life that you're looking for, it's booming and it's growing rapidly, and restaurants are coming and all the things that come with city life. So lastly, in the Salt Lake City metropolitan area, I want to talk about this particular region on the West Bench. And I'm affectionately calling it the West Bench because it's not just one city. It's not just Harriman or South Jordan or the future proposed development of Olympus Hills, which is down here in the southern portion of this region down here. It's so much more than that. It's West Jordan. It's all the way up into Magna and West Valley as well. So this region here is the last spot within the Salt Lake City metropolitan area and the Salt Lake Valley that really has room for growth. And it's this area precisely that we're seeing a lot of this growth just really start to kick off. And I think the forecasts, the population forecasts in this region, whether I'm looking at data from the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute from the University of Utah or otherwise, this region is probably going to account for another couple 100,000 residents as this area gets developed and built out. In fact, there's one particular development that I've recently sold some homes in that's north of Daybreak and north of South Jordan, and it's known as Terrain. And Terrain is right here, and it's going to be developed all the way up into the hills. And it's a really beautiful community. If you haven't seen that video that I did about Terrain, it's worth checking out. And if you're one of my clients that has just recently purchased in Terrain, please, I'm super excited that you guys get to live here because this is a new up and coming community. So this region on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley is going to and has been contributing to this growth greatly and it's going to for many years to come. Oddly enough, the neighborhood where I live, which is Daybreak, just on the south end of this, Daybreak specifically, in fact, let me highlight Daybreak. Daybreak is still alive and well. It still has a lot of growth yet to take place. There's still about 40% of Daybreak that is yet to be built out. So don't count Daybreak out. In fact, the funny thing is in the entire Salt Lake City metropolitan area, Daybreak alone for over a decade and a half accounted for 1 out of 4 new homes being built. So out of the entire Salt Lake Valley and the Salt Lake Metro, 1 in 4 new homes that were being built right here in Daybreak. And that's still going to be the case as Daybreak continues to grow and thrive. In fact, we just got another home under contract in Daybreak today with another client moving here. And so there's so many great places within Daybreak, and I've done numerous videos about it. But this is actually where I live. I love sharing Daybreak with others. And those that really fall in love with it, if it is the right place for you, is a phenomenal place to consider new construction. But with that said, Daybreak's not for everybody. Master planned communities with HOAs is not for everybody. So you don't have to just rely on these particular style of communities like Terrain or Daybreak or this new proposed master plan community up in Weber County. If you're looking for more of that rural life, Eagle Mountain is definitely going to be one of those places that could draw your attention. But there's a sleeper here that I want to talk about. There's 2 regions in Utah that I look to, and I think the future growth, when I'm forecasting out 10 to 15 years, where could the fastest growing cities in 10 years be? And I think personally, there's 2 regions. Number 1 is directly west of Salt Lake City in Tooele County. And Tooele County is a really funny word. It's spelled Tooele. Tooele is pronounced as Tooele. And you can see here, there's a lot of land out here. And we're already seeing a lot of growth. I've sold a lot of homes in every one of these little towns out here, including Lake Point and Stansbury Park and Grantsville and Tooele. But this region will continue to explode. And if you're looking to be a little bit outside of that growth belt or that curve whereby everybody's moving there and the prices are already out of control for you, this could be that place where you're kind of getting ahead of the curve. I think this and Eagle Mountain specifically are 2 of the best places to be ahead of the curve of growth, to see the most appreciation over the next decade because of its proximity to Salt Lake City and how desirable that is. So watch out for this region. I'm going to be doing more videos about this area moving forward. And this is this is really changing right before our eyes. It was my entire life that we considered Tooele just kind of being a really rural town, a rural area that nobody really considered moving out there. And now that is completely changing. So the other area that I think is worth talking about that's super, super attractive for a lot of people that I think is going to be a big portion of the growth moving forward is also in the Provo metropolitan area. But this time it's south of Provo. So when I look south of Provo, right here where Utah Lake kind of branches out and opens up here into this big chunk of land, we're in the cities of Spanish Fork and Springville and Mapleton and Salem and Payson. This particular area has a lot of room for growth. And I think this region in the state of Utah is going to be one of those major contributors to growth simply because we have so much land here that's probably going to get bought out and filled in and developed. And there's a lot of land here, whether it be in Palmyra or Lakeshore, there's a lot of land here. The one challenge that I see here, and the real reason why you don't see a lot of this land developed already, and like you do over on the other side of the tracks, so to speak, is because a lot of this land it's not actually possible to build a house with a basement, which if you live in the state of Utah, you know how desirable a basement is. And the vast majority of homes here in Utah have a basement. Whereas in this region, the reason why is because it's so close to Utah Lake. and the water table is too high, you can't actually build basements in a lot of these homes. In fact, if I zoom into one of these neighborhoods that's already been built out, let's see here. Let me just pop into this little neighborhood here. I would bet, let me just throw this little guy here. I would bet that these neighborhoods don't have basements, and they do not. I can look at this house right here. You don't see any window wells anywhere around the exterior of these homes. And that's to say that there just aren't basements in these particular areas, which in years past and decades past has been a detractor from people wanting to live here. But as land has been gobbled up and there's just not very much land left, we're going to see a different style of home being built out here, in my opinion. They're going to do things to make those homes much more attractive and get people to want to buy those homes where they don't have a basement. So you're going to see homes with more square footage above grade to compensate for the fact that you don't have that square footage below grade. So I think this is another area to keep an eye out on. And last but not least, in terms of growth and housing, I want to talk about one of the biggest areas that's going to be growing over the next decade and a half, and that's directly east and south of Park City. If you go directly east of Park City into this region, right around Jordanelle Reservoir, you see a lot of development happening around the mountains here. You see luxury homes and golf courses popping up. In fact, Tiger Woods is building his first mountain course here in Utah, right up here in the mountains. And so as you drive through these regions, there's a lot of open space that's getting developed. And I've recently read about a lot of projects that are being developed right now, including Wasatch Hollow, which is in between Heber and Jordanelle Reservoir, this area here. And you can already see the land starting to be developed here. And it's this region precisely where there's going to be another 24,000 homes in this area being built over the next decade and a half, maybe 2 decades. That's going to really be a game changer for filling the supply side of the economics in terms of real estate in this region. So this is an area worth watching. And those are the fastest growing areas in the state of Utah in terms of new construction. And ultimately, as someone who guides people through new construction each and every day, I still think it's the best buy in real estate right now. As interest rates are still above 6% for most people, we're seeing that most people that buy into a new construction home are getting down below 5%. They're getting in the high 4s. Now, your personal situation may differ or vary, but the real crucial component here to buying new construction, there's some different nuances in making sure that you get the best deal and making sure that we can leverage maybe one builder to another. Because when you walk in and you only talk to one builder, they're going to sell you on their product. But when they know that you're shopping multiple builders, multiple products in different communities, they really come out with, their guns a-blazing, so to speak, in terms of bringing the best incentives. I recently had a client go under contract on a new construction home where we were able to negotiate 7% of the purchase price back so that client of mine could use that money to cover all closing costs and buy down their rate. But you could use that money as well to offset the price. You could use it as a price reduction if you wanted to do so as well. There are even homes today where I can get 9% back of the purchase price to use towards closing costs, rate buy downs, or a reduction in purchase price, whatever you choose to do. So new construction is still a big bargain. And I see that happening for many years to come because as new homes have been built and as the building community has changed, what we're noticing is a consolidation in home building. We're seeing all the big companies kind of gobble up and buy up all the smaller companies. And that's not going to change. It's happened in so many other industries, including the banking industry, and it's happening with home building right now. In fact, there's a major player that's gobbling up home builders around the country, and their intention is to compete with the largest home builder in the country, and that's D.R. Horton. So we see a lot of this happening, and because of this, these companies have shareholders and investors to answer to, and they're willing to do so much to keep houses moving and keep that production happening. Because if they drop the prices of their homes in order to make those homes move, what they're doing is they're hurting how much they can sell the next community or the next house for. And so rather than drop the price as much, they're just throwing a bunch of money towards incentives. And for you as a buyer, that's a big win because that money goes so much further with new construction when you can leverage it to buy down the rate than it does it in a reduction of price. It's literally 2 to 3 times more impactful towards your monthly payment if we do it that way. So if you're considering new construction, reach out to me. I love helping people guide them through the process. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, drop a comment. Let me know what you think I should cover in future videos. And next week, I'm going to be talking all about the suburbs of Utah that aren't new construction, because they do go overlooked so often. It's my goal here and my intent to inform you and educate you about everything you need to know about moving to or moving within the state of Utah. And I'd love to be your real estate resource of choice. Reach out to me. You can find my information down in the description below. You can also book a call with me on the link that you'll find in the pinned comment on this and every video. And so with that said, until the next time, thanks, guys.